Hi guys, what's going on, and welcome back to another episode of Conqueror's Blade. So, today, Tseregs, or Tseregs, or dudes with some big maces, whatever you want to call them. These guys, the elite Tseregs, Tseregs, yeah, well, we're just going to go with mace dudes, I think, because otherwise we're going to be here on the pronunciation all day. So, these are a really interesting unit that I actually covered in another video, probably 2 or 3 months ago now, right back at the start of Season 2. Because they were a unit that I was really looking forward to being able to test out. Partly because no one else actually got a mace in the game, and also because they are almost entirely based around blunt damage. And seeing units that have blunt damage is incredibly rare. In fact, I think these are really the only ones that make it take advantage of it as their primary weapon type. And blunt damage is really good because no one really has much blunt defense. It's one of those sort of black spots in almost all units where they are really low on it. For example, if we scroll along to, say, some Imperial Spearmen, then you'll see if we go over to their defences, we've got 890 for piercing, 730 for slashing, but only 380 for blunt defence. They're much, over half as weak in terms of defensive stats for blunt as they are for piercing. And so that means that these Tseregs can do really good damage against most things, because most things have quite poor blunt defense. And when you compare that the Tseregs themselves actually have really fairly decent blunt attack, over 1600, almost 1700 on blunt AP, and a good 1500 in terms of damage, means that they hit really quite hard, and they hit for a really good chunk of that damage, which is really nice. On top of that, even though the blunt is really nice, the thing that the unit is really all about is the charge. They are kind of the kings of the charge. They have obviously a shield rush, but it's a really tight formation, and they have this ability where they hit through shields. Increased chance to bypass enemy shields, and you see it a few times within the tech tree. And it basically means that if you charge these at, say, a shield wall, the damage they will do will basically bypass and kill the shield unit, and just knock them down super effectively, because they bypass the shield so they get the full charge damage, combined with the fact it's a blunt charge damage, which is super effective, and then they just swing and finish them off anyway. Means that you charge these guys at, say, like a unit of shield, shields, particularly if they're in Shiltron or something like that, and these guys will just smash straight through them and really take out almost all the unit immediately. And that is really rare to have in anything sort of else other than Iron Reapers and maybe cavalry. That's kind of what makes these guys almost like a mini Iron Reaper unit. And yeah, it makes them a pretty special unit to use. They certainly feel quite nice. And that charge, yeah, it's a real game changer. But there are some consequences. I mean, a lot of people are really fans of this unit, and, I definitely like it a lot more now than I did when I first tried it, a couple of months ago. I really didn't get on with it very well. I found them pretty disappointing. Certainly a lot better. I don't think they're the world's greatest unit, but they're certainly pretty decent. Some of the problems I find they face are, they're not that tough. Even though they have a good amount of hit points, their defensive stats are pretty low. 470 on piercing and slashing, and that's with a doctrine. Means that they take quite a lot of damage, particularly from ranged units, and when enemy heroes or enemy slashing units get in amongst them and start to go out, these guys do die pretty quickly. And I think when you combine it with the fact that, the column formation that they get, which makes them absolutely phenomenal on the charge, means that their charge tends to end and they're right in a massive sort of cluster. It makes it very easy for enemy sort of AoE heroes, so things like glaives, poleaxes, to inflict a lot of damage on a lot of the models in the unit at the same time, because they are so close together rather than being that sort of bit more spaced out. But anyway, let's actually hop into some battles with these guys anyway, see how we get on. They certainly are a fun unit, and the charge is certainly pretty awesome, so let's get stuck in and see how we get on. So for the main clip, I wanted to focus on this sort of pretty long siege battle. I find I have quite a few times with these guys where I get a nice charge, do quite a bit of damage, but die. And this one panned out a bit better in that I was able to sort of rinse and repeat with the unit, which I think is really how it's supposed to be. And not all the charges are perfect. It didn't exactly go smashingly at the start, but, it gets us sort of 10 kills straight from the off. And basically no unit losses, and I pull them back. So that's kind of, I think, how the main playstyle of how the unit's really supposed to be. It would have been much nicer if I'd got a little bit more of a run-up on that charge, because I was a bit too close to it with the top of the stairs. But I think it still kind of enabled me to get, a fair chunk of damage in, and then pull back without any unit losses, and I'm just waiting on the cooldown now for the charge. And in these larger fights like this, I think you can get away with that. Obviously, you know, if you're on your own or in a small group of fight, you can't just really back out quite in the same way. But the unit does seem to do a pretty decent job of extracting itself from a fight because they move pretty quickly. You know, some units I find, you know, are just really pretty terrible at getting themselves out of situations. You know, you go and try and pull them out and they just walk slowly, get stunned all the time. These guys do seem to pull out pretty quickly, and I found them to be pretty decent for that. But they do lack a little bit in terms of their cooldown. So against the Schiltron, see, ton of damage. We really took out half the Schiltron straight from the off, and that's really exposed the backside to the rest of them. Able to get a really good amount of damage in. And then again, the unit can really quite nicely extract itself. We took a little bit of damage, killed an enemy hero on the way out, and lost, what, 2 models. But we basically wiped out a really good chunk of that Imperial Spearguard. And that's a heroic, you know, a 4-star unit that we just smashed into and killed a really good chunk of. So, you know, in that situation, I find these guys do work really quite well. But I have to say, the cooldown is far too long. 60 seconds is a really painful amount of time to wait. I wish there was something in the veterancy line that gave a cooldown to that, you know, or a reduced, what am I trying to say? An ability to reduce the cooldown. That's it. Words. So that it could be brought down to maybe 45 seconds or something like that, which would be a lot more reasonable. Because that 60 seconds, it's too long to wait between charges. At least that's what my experience is so far. But anyway, I was pretty pleased with that. You know, we were able to get in, get a damage, particularly with so many trebs coming in. This is obviously the new location of the B point on the Orlenburg siege, if you've not yet played on the map. So it makes it really much harder to defend. Much more trebable, enemies can get up much more easily. So that's why I'm trying to get in, get out in these sort of repeated charges. We're going up again, not really too much there for us to hit. I actually ended up suffering a little bit of lag on the game. Quite sure what was going on there. But you know, again, we get another 10-15 kills, something like that, wiping out a few more units, and we just sort of drive them in. I actually go a little bit melee because these archers were here. It helps us get another hero kill. Just driving some of the guys back, so they do work as a melee unit, you know. And we took another unit model loss, so we're still a 25 stack unit, and so far we're up to what, 45, almost 50 kills with this unit, and that's that rinse and repeat type cycle, and I think that's what makes them work so nicely. So then I was seeing that we've got these monastic knights coming down. Obviously don't want to face the charge, but I know their charges are over now and they're on a long cooldown. A little bit hesitant to get too involved with this, but at the same time, you know, killing a unit of monastic knights is always worth doing if you can. That's a 350 leadership unit. That's someone's half their army pool by killing this unit. And we managed to do it with a pretty negligible amount of casualties. Because we do, as I say, do a good chunk of damage. Because even though monastic knights are a very heavily armoured unit, as with everyone else, they've still got this sort of blunt gap in their armour, which kind of makes them a fairly usable unit. By this point though, I'm thinking I could really do with healing up, is one problem I've got now. You know, I should have probably pulled back to the supply point at this point. Ooh, we almost get trebbed. But thankfully, the unit responds pretty quickly to my commands. We managed to just get it back down the stairs without actually taking any real casualties. We're sitting here. Could have lost a few models there to that treb. So many trebs have come in at this section of wall, it's unbelievable. And there wasn't really a lot here, to be honest. I used the thinking I know I was going to pull back to the supply point. We eliminated the few shields that were there. But it was a bit unnecessary. We could have just engaged them in melee. But, you know, you got the charge, I might as well use it. So then I'm thinking, right, I want to pull back to a supply point to heal up. The unit's badly damaged. I would have pulled back to the one I did earlier, but if you saw there's that unit of guns right above it, I thought I'd take quite a few casualties going in, and they might have been able to shoot down onto me on the supply point. And, you know, as we saw, these guys don't really have a lot of defensive stats. I mean, that sort of 470 on piercing. Guns will rip them to pieces. They really, really will. So, you have to be really, really careful about units like that in that positioning. So, I pull them back a little bit further. It takes me a smidgen longer, you know, to get back to that supply point, but it is worth it to heal up safely. Because it's still a 21 stack unit. And remember, these are still a heroic, you know, a 4-star unit. They're still expensive in terms of leadership. So you've got to be careful that you're not just throwing them away too easily. So anyway, so I've healed up and I'm thinking, right, I'm going to get back to the B point. I went down to have a little look at the A point, see how that was getting on. Didn't look like there was a tremendous amount of pushing going on there, if I'm honest. And it looked like there was much more of a threat going on at the B point. So that's where I wanted to get back to try and throw these guys in. Because the B point, I think, with the changes, is certainly the harder point on the map to hold. And there's a reasonable amount going on, although I think our javelins just did a phenomenal job of one-shotting an enemy hero there. So good job to those guys. As we're kind of getting more people coming in, I'm thinking, right, I really need to get a charge off here. And I think I managed to screw the charge up a little bit here. Yeah, you can see it didn't quite go in the right place. I think I managed to lag a little bit. I'm not sure why we started lagging today, but there we go. We can only deal with what we can. And we start to push down the staircase a little bit, trying to get a little bit of damage in as we push down. I kind of didn't really need to do this, particularly with the gun sort of at the bottom. I kind of realised this halfway through. All right, let's get ourselves out of here. But again, unit manages to get itself out of trouble without really real casualties. Really nice for that pulling out ability. And, you know, for now, the B point is safe. And with only 30 seconds left, I'm feeling that we're pretty confidently going to be able to hold this. But I know I'm going to get my charge called down in time, so I'm planning on charging down the siege tower. That's kind of what I was thinking. But stuff actually starts to come up to me. So we're going to fight on a little bit. You know, I'm thinking about hopefully that I'm soon going to get my charge on cooldown and we can get a good chunk of damage in there. These javelins get pretty hyper aggressive, so we get a few kills on them. And then line ourselves up. 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second, and then the charge is off. Boom. And straight into this. These little militia guys don't fare very well against the charge. You know, they soon start to die, and you look at the amount of kills we're racking up now as we push on through and down the tower. With more time, we've obviously got more kills, but it certainly made for a fun little match. And we got, what, 2 hero kills, 75 unit kills with it. They are a nice unit, and I think if you can get them on that nice repeating charge cycle, they do pretty well because you get the charge damage and you can realistically seem to be able to get yourself out, you know, again and heal up. The problem is when you just get overwhelmed, you know, an enemy hero gets a massive knockdown, someone fires an explosive arrow at them, you know, and then they can get the damage applied to them kind of quickly. They kind of seem to win or they die quite easily. So that's kind of been my experience with them so far. But hopefully this has kind of been an interesting video, giving you a little bit more of an insight to what the Tseregs are like to actually play with. Yeah, certainly a lot better than I found them the first time round. I don't know if they're going to be a unit that are necessarily going to be bringing out every time. I don't think for me they match something like a prefetcher guard. So yeah, certainly a decent all-round unit and certainly one of the best charging infantry tier for tier. Anyway, that's all I've got for you today. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, do let me know what you think in the comments down below. Of course, subscribe to the channel for a load more Conqueror's Blade content, and I shall see you guys all on the next video.